All right, we're going to call to order our workshop Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, 5 p.m. Declaration of a quorum, 7 members present. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Bring us item C, hearing of citizens for the workshop. I believe we have any registered for this one. Brings item D, number 1, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to naming TASB delegate and alternate for 2024 Texas Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly. So we have the TASB conference coming up at the end of September in San Antonio this year. We need to make sure we have a delegate and an alternate selected. I do know Ms. McAdams has shown some interest in serving in that role, but I definitely wanted to open it up for conversation. If anybody had any interest in serving in any of those roles as well, because we do have to make sure we vote on that and have that appointed here today before we leave next month.
Obviously, I've done it a couple of times, and the other particular reason I asked to do it this year, and again, is because I was on the Legislative Action Committee out of the representative from Region 6, and so to kind of follow that through all the way through to TASB. But definitely would love somebody to join me as the alternate and learn about it and maybe get more involved.
In that role you're in, pardon me, is it a requirement, mandatory either way for you to be there, or?
They would like you to. It is not officially required. I mean,
Okay.
Somebody else could be.
I'm just trying to think, like, if there was anyone that wanted to serve in the delegate role, and you would, in a sense, serve maybe in the alternate role, or however y'all want to do it. I know we have 2 new trustees. I don't know who's on. I know I've served on it.
When do you have to arrive?
It's for Saturday only.
Oh, it's Saturday.
The main session person.
So it's like from lunch till, and depending how long the delegate assembly goes, but we can have lunch with our own Region 6, and then the meeting goes till 4-ish, 5-ish.
And that's on Saturday, though.
I think
Or it's always been, I thought.
Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Saturday. Thanks.
Okay, I thought for some reason it was before, so
No.
that makes better sense. I mean, I'm willing to be the alternate.
Okay. I do have to have a motion on all this unless anybody has any more comments.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Ben, second by Dr. Payne, and the motion, I believe, to clarify is Ms. McAdams will serve as the delegate. Ms. Iggy will serve as the alternate. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all for serving in that role. That'll bring us to item D2, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the 24-25 budget and tax rate. Ms. Wilson, here we are.
All right. So there are 3 budgets that are required to be legally adopted for a school district. That's going to be your general fund budget, your debt service budget, and your food service budget. And those are the ones who we're going to present to you this evening, as well as the tax rate. So the first thing we want to look at is the general fund budget and the assumptions associated with that budget. As you all know, we've lost ESSER funding starting September 30th of this fiscal year, and that's going to be a huge increase to our bottom line of our budget because there were multiple positions in those funding sources. We're going to plan for an increase in utility cost. Of course, in July, you approved a 2% raise for all pay families with the exception of our bus drivers, which were a 2.5% raise. The reason why we did that, of course, is because that huge increase in the bottom line from $17.15 to $18.50. But beyond district travel, we're going ahead and budgeting at the beginning of the school year for a couple of events that we feel like will go to state. If they do not go to state, that money will roll into fund balance, but it's just to set it aside at the beginning of the budgeting process. There was a reduction in budgets, and you can kind of see that across the board when you look at it overall of 7% in a lot of our departments, and they worked hard to get those budgets down some, and we'll continue to look at that in the future and see what we can do to even reduce those even further. Additional teacher incentive program. That program has been growing over the years. It grew nearly $1 million from the previous year to this year, and then we're going to add on fine arts this next school year. Therefore, you're going to see that in cost increase a little bit. But you're going to also see that in the revenue side. You're going to see an increase in revenue and an increase in expenditures, and that's going to account for a little bit of that jump that you saw from the previous time the budget was presented to now. Increase in healthcare contribution. That's something we did in that was approved by Amy Draws and you guys in the month of June, I believe. And then minimal enrollment growth. I have some exciting news about that. And then hold harmless funding. So you're going to see that affect the current school year that we're wrapping up, as well as the new school. That's something that hit the formulas late in the game, and that is basically because of that freeze adjustment from 40,000 to 100,000. So what they're doing is going back and looking at that and looking at the loss of funding that the school districts experienced and taking that into Tier 1 and Tier 2 funding associated with the summary of finance. But that's going to be a huge increase in the revenue that was submitted that you saw when we did our compensation plan versus the revenue you're seeing tonight. So if you had some questions about the differences in revenue, that's attributed to hold harmless, and then that's attributed to Texas incentive, teacher incentive allotment.
While you're on the hold harmless, can I just ask that real quickly? That's only for the M&O, not for INS?
It's both.
They are going to do both?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
if you'll look
good.
at the INS in a little bit, there's a little over $2 million set aside there for hold harmless, and that's attributed to over the years when they went from 25 to 40,000 in a homestead exemption, and then when they went from 40,000 to 100,000. What they do for any debt that's already been passed, they hold the district harmless for the loss in funding from decreasing our values.
Okay, great. That's good. Thank you.
Okay. So back to student enrollment, you can kind of look here and look at a historical enrollment. I do want to point out, just because I want to come back with the same number every year at the same time. So what I like to look at is compare every year against snapshot. That gives us a point in time that we can compare our enrollment on a consistent basis so that you can really see what enrollment's doing. So if you look here, last year at snapshot, we were 14,319 students. That was in October, the last Friday in October. That number did increase by the end of the fiscal year. And then you can also look at the ADA. Now, these average daily attendance were pulled off of PEIMS reports at the summer submissions, and you can kind of look at what our average daily attendance has done for our school district. If you look prior COVID, our average daily attendance was 97%. So as we go into these next few years, I think that might be a way that we can kind of look and see what we can do to try to get our daily attendance back up, because we know it not only affects funding, but it affects the learning for our students as well. So I think it's very helpful for us to kind of be mindful of that and see what we can do to get the kids in the classroom, not only for funding, but the most important reason is for education. But we're anticipating a 0.82% increase on enrollment into the next school year. And I think that that is going to be doable. I'm going to go back to this slide just to kind of point out. So we've got an actual enrollment of 14,438. On our first day of school, I think it was 14,510 students. Of course, there's some no-shows in there, but compared to the previous year at the same time, we're still up 450 students, 57 students from the previous year at this same point in time. So that's very helpful. We even looked at kind of free and reduced numbers to see kind of where that was lying out. I'm up 205 kids in free, and I'm up 21 kids in reduced. And so we're seeing a little bit of trend in student enrollment on both sides. I think those are both indicators of favorable growth for our school district. Another thing you want to look at a school district, if you hit snapshot at one rate and you end the year at a different rate, that's a good indicator that your district is growing in enrollment. And so that's another favorable indicator for College Station ISD.
Sorry, I want to stop you on that previous. One more quick question on the previous slide. The ADA you put in there for this coming year, it looks quite lower than the others. What was the reasoning there? Are we just
Well, you busted me because I like to kind of budget conservatively,
conservative.
just in case, so that we can make sure we get, of course, like I said, get 100% of our revenue. And so we kind of budget just a little bit because you don't budget on enrollment. You have to budget, you want to anticipate the student, so you're staffing on enrollment to make sure you have the correct staff in place, but you only get funding on the kids that show up in the classroom. So that's kind of why I did a little bit of conservative there. Yes, you caught me.
Okay.
I'm sorry. But yes, that's the reason. Taxable property values, you can kind of look at some historical information here. This is another number that you get certified values on one day, and the next week you've got a different value. So it's a continual moving number. So what you're looking at here, just so that we can get true estimates again about what our real growth is, these are certified taxable values. So we call them T2 values. What's important to a school district on a T2 value is this is what they locally assign how much they're going to take off our state revenue. So whatever our maximum compressed tax rate is, they're going to multiply that by this taxable value that you see on the screen, and that's what they're going to say that the College Station ISD has to come up with that money. So that's going to be our local share. And so that's kind of what's important about what you're looking at here. In addition, when you look at these numbers, that's the certified property values. That's really what we're going to collect for debt service as well. So kind of to put that all in perspective, I like to explain it as a cup. Okay, so how we fill our cup size is determined by the students that we have and the means the way we serve them. Some special populations get more funding than others, but when we go through the full formula, we have a cup, okay? And so our cup stays the same no matter what. What determines where the water flows in the cup is determined by your local share, which is the previous screen where you saw you take that times your maximum compressed rate, and then that tells you how much of the state revenue is going to fill your cup, or local revenue that's going to fill your cup. And anything that above your local share that fills your cup is going to be state funded. So all that to say, it's wonderful when tax rates go up, but that does not mean that the district's going to get more funding. The only reason when tax revenue goes, property values go up for a school district, it helps us in our INS, it helps us on our debt service payments, but it can't help us on our data operation. Because if you look at that last cup, if we have more local share than what we have in our formulas, the flow over goes back to the state to help other school districts, but it doesn't get to stay with College Station ISD.
So that's how we've been able to keep local revenue, but drop the tax rate. So who sets the size of the cup?
The size of the cup is set by our formula funding. So what happens is how our students are. So our ADA is one of them, and then you get additional funding for special education kids, GT kids, career and technology. And so that's your tier 1 funding. And then you get tier 2 funding, which is not really formulated in the cups, but that's that enrichment formula. So it's all based on the formulas, if that makes sense. So once our formula says how big our cup is, then that's how we go in there and backfill the cup based on what our local share is. And then anything that our local share doesn't take care of, the state comes in. Now you said, that's how we've been able to decrease the tax rate in our debt service account. Yes, that's what you're going to look at. For INS, it really gets kind of tricky because that has gotten to a point where the legislation is setting our tax rate. They set our maximum tax rate. In fact, we have to send it to them to get approval to set that rate. And then the additional pennies on that are called enrichment pennies. 5 of them can be set by the board. 3 of them is a voter tax election, and College Station has that approved. Therefore, that makes up the 8 enrichment pennies. Okay. So this is our proposed general fund budget for right now. So we've got a local revenue at $106 million, which is made up, a majority of that is made up by our tax revenue. The state is going to kick in some of that. That state revenue is made up of our formula funding, but then something called TRS on behalf. It's really a booking. When we go up on raises, you're going to see TRS go up, on behalf go up, and you're also going to see the expenditure go up the same amount. That's just where the state says I have to book the amount of money that they're contributing to teachers. And it's a revenue increase and an expenditure increase, but it's no impact to the budget in a sense, in the bottom line. The federal revenue, we did have to decrease that this year because of the loss in SHARS funding. So you're going to see that, as well as we were taking indirect cost on those ESSER funds to the tune of about $500,000. And so you're going to see that decrease also in the federal funds. Expenditures are coming in about $153 million for a deficit budget of 4.9. Now, I will show you a little bit later how that's really going to affect us because we're going to adopt this budget tonight, but of course we're going to run on a 10-month budget.
Can I ask if you can go back real quick, the state 40 million, is that the $6,100 we talk about all the time that we're getting per kid?
6160. Yeah, okay. Yes. And then you get, that's your regular ed kid, and then you get additional funding for the different kinds of services. But yes, ma'am.
Well, but it also, well, some of that is coming, not out of that 40, it's coming out of the local as well. I mean, that's the size of the cup, if you think about it, right? A part of it comes from local, a part of it comes from the state.
Yes. Yes. That is the size of the cup. And then, oops, y'all don't want to hear the cups again, huh? I think accounting can make fun, but you guys might not. If you have on your handout, you're going to look at the next slide, should have some graphs in it, but it's not showing up, the comparative graphs. I apologize for that. I don't know why it didn't pull through, but I really kind of wanted to show you that most of the budgets compared to the previous year are running about the same. The only difference, payroll went up to about 83% of the budget when it was at 82.6 in the previous year, and then there was just a few adjustments throughout that. But mainly I wanted you to see that payroll attributes 83% of College Station ISD's budget. And then as we tighten our budgets, you're going to see that percentage go up. But that's the most important thing in education is our teachers in the classroom. So that's where we should be.
And I know you've brought it up in other presentations, but I guess on a percentage basis, out of that 5 million, how much of that do you think is, I know that the gap term isn't right, but I guess increases beyond our control, like insurance, inflation, and then how much of that 5 million deficit is things that we have brought on ourselves?
I think our deficit, a majority of our deficit is we added positions multiple years ago for ESSER funding, and then those rolled into the general fund this year. That's a majority of what you're seeing in the deficit budget because we were spending between $2 and $3 million out of ESSER funding every year. The other part of that deficit would be attributed to SHARS funding. The loss of that SHARS funding was about $1 million. Is what I'm estimating. And so that's going to contribute to some of that. And then you've got a little bit of increase in utility cost. Then, of course, you've got those raises that were a little over $2 million. And so that's really a majority of what you're looking at there as a deficit. We were able to cut cost to keep that down a little bit, but yes, and all in all. Okay, so we'll move on. I just wanted to point out last board meeting, we approved the $2.2 million. That's attributed to a lot of what you're seeing in the deficit. And then I wanted to kind of break out just to show you how well they've done at cutting costs. And so I just wanted to look at the 4 other categories and compare them to the previous year. So you're kind of looking at contracted services, supplies, miscellaneous, and capital outlay. And you can see on a majority of those, there wasn't an increase as much as supplies. And what can be contributed to the supplies is also with those ESSER funding. We had subscriptions out of there that some of them are going to move into the general fund, as well as custodial supplies. We were taking those out of our ESSER funding, and they're moving into our general fund budget. And so you can kind of see most of the increase is sitting there in that supplies account. So this is something I always kind of like to show because if you took a per student funding, I know we get that $6,060, but this is the total amount we get in the general fund per student and how that breaks out. And so $6,407 of a student cost goes into the classroom, and that is over 60%. And so that's a great number. That's a great number. And that includes our library, it includes the day-to-day operations in the classroom, and then it also includes any staff development that you might have for those teachers in the classroom. So that all sits in a majority of the dollar that you're looking at spent on a child. The other is you've got to take into consideration that next $1,250 is really just insurance for the class, insurance for our campuses, as well as utilities, because that's the maintenance and operation budget, and that makes up a majority of, it's a huge portion of the budget, and that's just to keep the lights on and everything comfortable for learning. The next one you look at there is school leadership with $516, and that's really just our principals and staff on campus. And then the next one falls with guidance and counseling. That's our counseling on the campus. Then you can get into extracurricular activities and then the driving that it takes for the kids to get to school. So you can kind of see a great breakdown of how we're spending our dollar here at College Station. This is just a breakout by function because when we approve our budget, we're going to approve it by fund and function. And so I kind of wanted just to lay out to you what that means. So instruction is really kind of tells a story that is complete in the classroom. So anything in the classroom, you're looking at 58.15%. If they go to the library, that's your next section. That's 0.95% of the budget. C&I, staff development, that's for us working with teachers directly in the classroom and training teachers. You can see 1.15%. That increased from the previous year, but a lot of those coordinators that were in ESSER funding have moved into the general funding, and they're sitting in that line item. Instructional leadership is actually our instructional leaders here at the central office. Campus administrators, of course, are administrators on a campus. Guidance and counseling are our counseling staff on a campus. Of course, you've got your nurses, your transportation, a little bit of food service, but basically that's just a TRS number that goes back. We would have to increase that if we have some outstanding charges on accounts. Then we would have to move some money in to cover there. Curricular activities, that's all curricular activities. It's not just athletics. That includes band. And general administration is, of course, the next one. I told you the big number, that $1,205,000 per student. That's your plant and maintenance and operations sitting there. Safety and security, this number did go up a little bit for our full year funding for the safety and security on campuses. Of course, that was passed by legislation. They gave us a little bit of money, but for the most part, that's an unfunded mandate. Community services, that would be our community services with our Education Foundation, a little bit of that. And then, of course, we got a few things there. And then the last one is tax appraisal and collection. That's our cost for our appraisal district and collection of our taxes. So our total expenditures are $153,539,356. So moving on, I wanted to kind of point out what that looks like because we're going to go ahead and approve the 12-month budget, but I want to keep in mind what a 10-month budget looks like because that's what we're going to close out. So when it gets to the month of June and July, Mr. Neely and myself, who was very instrumental in pulling all these numbers together for us, we'll present a 10-month and a 12-month budget. And we'll keep you informed on how we're going to close out a 12 for sustainability, but then what we'll close out for a 10 so that you'll know how much money will actually go into our fund balance, which is very key, I think, with what's going on. So moving on to debt service. Of course, we talked about that a little bit earlier about the hold harmless. That's affecting our revenue. And then, of course, we went ahead and had that 23-24 bond sale, and you'll see those in our numbers as well. So you'll kind of see a big jump. So you start with the 24-25, and you see that $43 million. That's our bond payments for this next coming year. And you can kind of see where it drops down a little bit. We've had one bond sale of our total bond packages, and then we'll go ahead and sell those in the next few years, which will kind of fill up that line. But the very big positive here is we came to our voters and we said that we would pass no more than 2 cents, and we're at 0.013 pennies right now. And so that's a big positive for the school district. A lot of that is because our property values have gone up, but then we were able to give that back to them in a sense. So we're not going to defease debt this school year, but we did make a larger payment up front to kind of help us get that debt down.
Sorry, can I clarify something else on that one? You were saying, so this includes just one of the bond sales out
It
of?
includes $94 million.
Okay, so obviously there will be other debt payments when we get around, that's what you were saying, there'll be other, just when we sell the rest
Yes,
of the
when we
bonds.
sell debt, you'll see our debt schedules go up. But the positive about this, when you lay this out and you can kind of see how it is, we have capacity. So we have capacity to increase these upcoming years to be able to keep that penny down. So if you saw this flat line and I still had bond sales to
Got
make,
it.
then you're going to have to see where I'm going to have to increase the penny.
Okay,
But-
so we're not really projecting out, I mean, what's really going to happen, we were projecting before we do the sales. So,
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
got it.
but you can kind of see that we have capacity.
Makes sense, appreciate it, thank you.
Okay. So here's the proposed debt budget for this school year. There's debt services of 43,901, 442. That makes up the previous screen, as well as we have debt service fees. That makes up the difference there. The other is $75,000, and which is a little bit different than what I'm used to in my school district. But a lot of times with these large apartment complexes in College Station, they will get their tax value, and then they'll take it to court, and they want to decrease that rate. So we have to refund sometimes, and so that money's set aside for any possible refunds that we have for litigation on larger material properties. Next one is our food service budget. This one did increase, and I want to kind of talk to you about that. There was $613,000 in something called commodity fees. It's another one of those washes on the bottom line, but it should be an increase to revenue and increase to expenditures. We take our commodity report in the month of June, and we book that to our books for closing purposes. I went ahead and booked that estimated cost at the beginning of the budget so that we would just be able to plan for it the whole time. So you're going to see a large increase in revenue and expenditures, but it's because that commodity payment is booked at the beginning, the estimate. And then if it fluctuates, and it sometimes fluctuates, because it might start out at $500,000, but we have an amazing food service director that really watches anything that's good. If it's good strawberry cups come by or whatever, she's going to go grab that, which is going to increase the commodity cups. And she does an amazing job at that. But there was the increase in healthcare contribution, the 2% raise, and then their bottom line went up a little bit as well. And then budgeted commodities, and then, of course, I think since 2017 is what I'm hearing. We're going to fact check that for you, but we have not had an increase in meal cost. And so that's a big positive. The free and reduced numbers going up, that's going to help the budget as well. So you're going to see a little bit of revenue go up because we get more per funding for a free and reduced kid. But this is kind of the bottom line. We have the local revenue, of course, is up just a little bit. You're going to see most of the revenue increases in those commodities. And then you can kind of see how that plays out. So we're going to look at taxes a little bit. So this is kind of our historical tax rate, and I haven't got, I'm a data geek in a little bit. I want to go back and look at your old audits and see how far this goes back. In my previous district, it went back to 1992. So in 1992 is the last time you're seeing these tax rates be this low. And I know for sure here at our district, because Austin went back and geeked it out for me, it was 20 years. So we know these two years that we have here, the 23-24 and the 24-25 was the lowest tax rate that College Station's seen in 20 years for sure. So that's pretty exciting. And it's not going up much this year as a proposed tax rate of 97.29. So just to kind of make sure everyone understands, when we set tax rates, it's kind of crazy for a school district because I can tell you M&O has really two tiers, and then you've got your INS, then you have your total tax rate. So just to kind of explain it a little bit more, when you have your general operating tax rate, that's really your day-to-day rate that you're setting to do your day-to-day operations of your school district. Like I said, 83% of our budget is in payroll, and so that makes a majority of what you're seeing for that M&O tax rate. That would be like to you, the groceries, house repairs, just minor things like that. And we want to get into more minor repairs coming out of the general fund. The debt service fund is where you're paying off your debt. You have the mortgage, now you've got to pay it off. You've got the new car, now you got to pay it off. So that's what the debt service fund is. So we've passed our bonds, we have our bond debt. That's what we're utilizing those funds to do, pay off our debt. To go a little bit further in your maintenance and operation tax, because I said the legislation sets our tax rate. Basically, I send information into TEA. They tell me what my maximum compressed tax rate can be for a school district. It is based on our values, just like they said. There's a 2.5% jump there, and if you look at the 2.5% and you exceed the 2, then they're going to compress you to a minimum. The reason why they're going to compress you, if you guys were back in a long time ago and remember something called, goodness gracious, Dr. Harkrider, you're going to have to help me. It's when we had to, it's recapture, but it's Robin Hood. Thank you. Back to Robin Hood. What was happening in Robin Hood is because my values are so high, I could have a 50-cent tax rate, and then someone's value next to me would were not near as high, and so they had to set a 90-cent tax rate to get the same funding per student. So that's what really happened in Robin Hood. Thank you very much. And because of that, they set a floor on our compressed tax rate. So if your rates go up, they're going to set you down to a floor so that we all can somewhat stay consistent between our neighborhoods. And the floor this year, we're set down to the floor. It's 0.6169 because we had a more than a 2.5% increase in our taxes. The next one is your Tier 2 funding. We call that the golden pennies. If you want to look at that, that's enrichment funding. That means if you set the tax rate a little bit higher, the state gives you a little bit of a token. Because what they're going to do is, although we have a high rate per penny, Austin has a higher rate per penny. So what they're doing is they're going to guarantee me Austin's rate if I set these pennies. Okay? So we get that. That's how if we got $5 million for the additional 3 pennies, and the state kicked in money, and it's because they took our penny to Austin's yield. Okay, so they're enrichment pennies. So the first golden pennies are called golden because they can't recapture on us. They're set at a certain amount. They're not going to recapture those pennies. The next copper pennies, it's at a lower yield per penny. Therefore, if we go out for those pennies in the future, and if the state does not improve our funding, that will be an option for us. And I'm telling you, if the state cannot, we have to educate kids. And those are the copper pennies. However, we will have recapture on some of those pennies. So we won't get to keep. We only keep up to the yield. Anything we collect over goes back to the state. So that's why we like to stay away from those copper pennies because of what they mean for College Station.
And sorry, I'm going to ask one more thing. Just to clarify, our last VATRE was the last of the golden pennies we could
Yes,
get,
ma'am.
right?
Yes.
Just, right. So,
They were 3 pennies. 5 we can have without voter approval, just board approval, and then 3 are through the Vader.
right. So obviously they required the VATRE too, but those are done and we've used them.
Yes, ma'am.
right.
They're included. We're not giving them back if all possible. Then if you want to look at comparative tax rate, you've got the 23-24 M&O tax rate at 0.6992. And of course, this year we're suggesting 69.69. Basically, that's your maximum contrast tax rate and then the 8 pennies. And then we've gone up just that 0.013 for your INS tax rate from 2630 to 2760. So all in all, you have a 0.0107 increase in tax rate, just a little over a penny at 97.29. And that's what we're proposing for a tax rate. Okay, so I'm going to be mindful because we talked about this last time, so I'm going to bring it back up. Sustainability, I'm excited about the 10-month budget because that adds that additional money to our fund balance, and that's going to be very helpful. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you the best thing about a 10-month budget is what's going to happen on a campus. It's going to be so much better for our campuses and for our directors that are trying to do business and line up their budget with what's going on in our district. So we have that near 3 months, and we're going to be okay. And then just this historical information on our fund balance, because we do need to get into the point where we're putting a little bit more in there every year based on an increased budget. It will need to just go up a hair every year. So we've got to figure out how to balance the budget. And I think we're going to work really hard to do that. And going forward, that's just kind of going to be our goal. So does anybody have any questions?
Going back to the fund balance, assuming no changes in funding, at what point do we hit the proverbial cliff on, is it next academic year? Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Next academic year. So what we'll continue to do, and I think they've done a great job because I've looked at, that's what I've spent a lot of time. Ms. Cooper back here, Mr. Neely, we have dug through payroll, looked at things that have happened, and I've kind of had to get up to par from what was been going on before I got here. But a lot of things that I've seen is just, they really looked at, and I think Ms. Leifer was very involved in that too, looking at what do we have, are we overstaffed in places? And so they've kind of started doing that, but, and I don't think there's been a huge impact to the budget because I think like with gifted and talented, correct me if I'm wrong, we went from 13 to 10, but I think that's a really great number. So, but I really think we'll just have to look in that. We'll have to look at every director's budgets and then the campus budgets as well, and then continue to look at staffing needs, make sure that we're equivalent across the campuses, and then make sure we have any fluff. Would you like to add something to that, Dr. Harkrider?
Process of going through this year and continuing to watch and watch budgets, even though they're 10-month of what we're spending money on, how that's working, and just it's a process we'll go through the rest of this year.
Can I follow up with a question on that? As you mentioned earlier, our overall number is risen, and one of the reasons is something like the TIA rate, because it's an in and out. Do we need to have a bigger fund balance for things like that as well, even though it's kind of an in and out? I mean,
I would say no for certain things like that. The only reason why I'm saying that, because that doesn't get paid until the month of August. So a lot of times you've got to have money in your fund balance just to pay for certain things, like because you have to upfront your money before you get your money based on your payment plan. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of have to watch that for cash flow purposes. And so that's a big part of your fund balance. Another thing is we'll look at interest tonight. Everything's gone up to a 2% of your value of your building if you get hit by wind and hail. And so you can look at the committed fund balance that I said aside $1 million, and that's just really a start, because we've got to be prepared just in case something was like that was to happen in our school district, because that would be a hit to our fund balance. And so that's a lot of kind of what I'm saying. But when you look at a fund balance and you look at our board policy, it's only set at 3 months, but I don't think we need to dip any further down than 3 months of the total budget.
If I'm reading this correctly, like when you go back to student enrollment, you've been pretty conservative with some of your numbers. There's a chance we could be pleasantly surprised at the end of the year with some
Absolutely.
things, and then would lessen our deficit. So do you feel like this is a more conservative budget than years past for this district? I don't know if you've had the chance to review our other ones.
Okay, so, yeah, I like to budget where I think I'm going to collect 100% of our revenue. And then you have to set aside contingencies in your expenditure account. And so I haven't tracked a historical now, because this is a starting point for me. But if you took my historical budgets from my previous district, you would look at my budget and you would see I would collect 100% of my revenue, but I'm only going to spend 98% of my expenditures. So when you look at 98 to 99% of your expenditures based on a $353 million budget, odds are, if you can collect 100% of your revenue, you're going to see that kind of squeeze down, and you're not going to see the full hit. And I think that was brought up by you last time. They might bring a $4.3 million budget to the board. However, you don't see that at the end of the year. And that's a lot of what's going on, is we're trying to hit 100% so you feel comfortable of what's going on at the district, and we're not having to make huge changes during the school year. But we've got to have a few contingencies set aside. For example, in this budget, I hate to say this out loud, but I have 2 bands going to state. If 2 bands don't go to state, that's going to be a savings. You know, there's just little things like that that are built in, that we've got that money set aside for great things. But, you know, if they don't happen, that money goes against that deficit.
You just guaranteed they both make state now, which is great. So we're good.
But you know,
I don't want to
that's
jinx anything either, you know. But
that's
it's
important,
right.
because I know we're as parents, we're hearing about budget cuts, and that number's in this in the activities and all funds and things like that. So it's really important and good to hear that we're saving as a district for some of those kind of things, so those groups don't get left out when it comes.
I think when we look at all budgets, and that's something that I'm big on, is we're going to do something that's least impactful to a kid, because that's why we're here. And so that's what we're going to look at first, is what's least impactful for a kid, and that's what we'll hit first. And I think from working with this leadership group, they have the same thoughts, and so I don't think that'll be a hard one to follow.
I'll just do a quick add. I really appreciate the layout of the numbers and in really directly using the budget codes. I mean, because that gives us a consistency from year to year to look at those specific buckets. So I mean, that's the same codes we use every year. So I think that's a lot of things in that were helpful. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's great how excited you get talking numbers. So good job on
I
that.
didn't start out by telling y'all accounting can be fun. I was trying to
Right.
talk y'all into it. All right, thank you, guys.
That'll bring us to item D3, consideration and discussion related to memorandum of understanding for the 2024-25 school year. Lynn College for High Schools, Career Technology Education Center, TAMU Hotel and Conference Center, Lynn College P-Tech, Britt Rice Electric Apprenticeship Training Program. Ms. Parkinson and Mr. Ross.
Good evening, Dr. Harkrider, Mr. Horak, and members of the board. We are here to talk about several of our incredible community partnerships that we have in College Station ISD that will be actually up for your approval during tonight's board meeting on the consent agenda. So the first of those is our partnership with Blinn College for academic and some technical dual credit at all three of our high schools. The last time we approved this MOU was 2021, and there have been some significant changes since that last approval. The first of which is that Blinn College has chosen to participate in the Financial Aid for Swift Transfer or FAST program, which provides funding for participating public institutions to offer dual credit courses to educationally disadvantaged students at no cost for those particular students. And so that is the higher education term, educationally disadvantaged. We call this group of students our students who are economically disadvantaged, students who are on the free and reduced lunch program because of the FAST program, then qualify to attend dual credit classes at no cost for them through tuition and also with their textbooks as well. So this also has benefits for all of our students because it sets the tuition rate to be the maximum tuition rate that can be charged to any of our students in College Station ISD, which for this year is $56.87 per semester credit hour. All right, so currently in College Station ISD at our two comprehensive high schools, we offer 6 hours of English dual credit as well as government and economics. And then we have a variety of technical dual credit that varies from year to year based on which of our CTE courses are offered that year, which ones make. And then it also is based on our teachers and their backgrounds and what certifications that Blinn will grant to them to be able to give our kids technical dual credit. At College View High School, we have up to 42 hours, which is about 14 courses that are available for students through the Collegiate Academy to take there. I think it's important to note that at College View High School, we do not offer any advanced placement courses, only dual credit. However, at the comprehensive high schools, we offer 21 advanced placement courses in addition to those dual credit offerings there. Okay. And then Mr. Ross will also share a little bit more about our P-TECH program at College View High School, which has to have its own separate MOU to meet those requirements. Okay. So we have on the agenda this evening 3 different MOUs. We have to have one per high school, but it gives us 3 options for our tuition. For academic dual credit, this first option will be applicable to most of our courses at this time, and that is that a non-FAST student will pay the state of Texas approved tuition rate for the current academic year, which was around $56 as I showed you previously. Okay. There are some circumstances where we have an instructor who is a CSISD employee who is providing that dual credit opportunity, and they are not receiving any additional compensation from Blinn. That would lower that tuition rate down to $20 per credit hour. And the district would also receive a $500 reimbursement of service. I think that as we expand dual credit programs, we'll have more courses move into that second category of academic dual credit long term. And then with technical dual credit, if it is one of our own teachers that Blinn has certified for the course, and if that person is not receiving any additional compensation from Blinn College, then the tuition is waived. And so that is really beneficial to our kids as well. All right, so what does this really mean? I think this might be the most important slide in the deck here for the changes. This is a decreased cost for dual credit for all of our students in CSISD who are currently enrolled. So on our 2021 MOU, our tuition rate was $92 per credit hour and also included a general fee component as well. So last year for English 1301, it would have cost $318 for a student to take that course for one semester. This year with the changes, if a student is paying out of pocket with that new rate, it would be $170, $170.61 to be able to take that course, which is a significant decrease of great benefit. Also, as we continue forward and if we are able to expand our offerings and have more of our CSISD employees who are providing the courses with dual credit, we could have students taking a course for as low as $60 for a 3-hour course under this MOU. It gives us lots of opportunity as we move ahead. I'd also like to remind you that all of our students who are economically disadvantaged are able to take these courses with free tuition. And then also part of our partnership is that we, as a school district, also help fund their books as well. Okay. And as I've said a couple of times, but I want to reiterate, we also have the opportunity through this new MOU to explore expansion of dual credit classes at both the comprehensive high schools and then also through College View as well. It gives us a lot of flexibility. All right, I believe that ends my portion. If you'll have any questions about the new Blend MOU.
Well, two things. Just, is it state or federally funded for this program? Do you know? Is it, do y'all know?
Federal? Okay. Mr. Goolsby is saying federal.
Federal, okay. Because it sounds wonderful, really does. And so I guess then the follow-up is, as you said, do y'all have any more to offer on the exploring expansion? I mean, obviously we have not done a lot of dual credit at our comprehensive high schools in the past, but do you think those will be mostly CTE or other, or who knows?
You know, I think that most of those would be academic dual credit, really, when we're looking at it. When we look at comparable high schools to our two comprehensives especially, there's a greater menu of options. You know, you are well acquainted with the changes that we made to EIC local with our GPA policy. That group of students who has dual credit included in their GPAs they are currently sophomores. So I think as we're planning forward, we need to look toward their senior year and making sure that they have more opportunities beyond English and government and economics. And so Dr. Harkrider and I have had some initial conversations with our partners at Blend, and I look forward to bringing on our new coordinator for GT and advanced academics. Vicki Murphy's responsibilities have changed into that conversation so that we can make sure that we have more options that are available. I also think, you know, we have, I said 21 AP courses at the two comprehensive high schools. Our AP program, in my opinion, would continue to be strong. We have a lot of students who choose to take that advanced, locally designated advanced course junior, senior year, and I think some of these dual credit classes might be an avenue to replace our locally designated advanced courses and make sure that more of our students are leaving our campuses with more college credit.
Yeah, that's great.
We'll have future conversations on the academic side of dual credit. I've had more success if it can be our faculty that has the certification to deliver to our kids because they're part of our campus. The kids see them every day. There's nothing to do with adjunct folks coming in and teaching kids, but we've just had our kids have been more successful with a faculty member as part of our high school staff being able to teach that dual credit. The certification kind of gets tricky, but that's stuff that we work with, whether it's Blend, whether it's A&M, on what that looks like.
That's great, and it's cheaper, right, if it's our own.
Give me the clicky.
All right, Mr. Horak, Dr. Harkrider, members of the board. My name is Kevin Ross. I'm your CT director for the district. And like Ms. Parkerson was saying, we have some MOUs. We kind of cross over in some of the dual credit opportunities. Our MOUs, our memorandum of understanding, are basically our contracts allowing our students to go out into the private sector to learn outside of our walls. So one of our first ones to talk about is our Texas A&M Hotel. This has been a fantastic partnership over the last 2 years. This will be our third year going into it. This is for our College View students and our hospitality program. They'll rotate in front office, conference center, banquets, room divisions, maintenance facilities. We bus them over there twice a week, and that get hands-on learning. And again, we'll be asking for that renewal from you guys later on this evening. Our what we call our P-Tech, this is something that's been at College View. This will be our second year of technically the P-Tech, but it's been going on for this will be our third year. This is for our students that we bus over to Rellis. They are learning all the hands-on, the trades. Facilities engineering technology is our term for it. For most laymen out there, it's a little plumbing, a little electrical, a little bit of sheet metal, really getting into the trades. And this gives us that opportunity for those kids to get that dual credit. There's a couple of things that cross over into what Ms. Parkerson was saying in that MOU as well. With that dual credit, the FAST system, things of that nature. And then the last one on my list is our Britt Rice Electric Apprenticeship Program. This has been going on for many years in this town. It's been a great opportunity for Texas Workforce Commission to have a certified apprenticeship program in a town, a city. You have to have an LEA, a local education agency, to oversee that grant. We've been overseeing that grant probably about 15 years now. It's just another great opportunity for our community to really work on those trades, and we just oversee it. We do a lot of the paperwork. We do a lot through human resources. We do a lot through our business office, just kind of the checks and balances of any grant. And those are mine. Any questions for me?
Just for cheerleading purposes, what are the outcomes of the Britt Rice Apprenticeship Program and the A&M, the hotel center?
So they're really apples to oranges comparison. The Britt Rice grant, we don't currently have any K through 12 kids in it. It's usually when kids graduate high school. We, again, serve as that LEA in order for them to get that grant through Texas Workforce. We work side by side with them. We try to funnel kids to them when they graduate. We absolutely respect what they're doing. They're doing a phenomenal job. But as far as that goes, it's really a pass-through. On the other side with our...
But I think it's a community service because we're a community resource.
Oh, absolutely.
And then they're an apprenticeship and they're going into a job.
Correct.
Right after, yeah.
And it's what you hear about with a true journeyman, the license. They handle it. They have 4 years. We audit all 4 of those classes. It's part of the details of the grant. And they have a tremendous school. It's literally over there. Most of y'all know off Longmire, that giant facility. They have their own school that they teach night school. They have their own electricians that are actually the instructors. And then you'll every now and then, if you look on our website, you may see a Britt Rice apprenticeship job opening. It's not for us. It's actually passing through for them. We run their background checks and things of that nature. The comparison over to the RELIS, total different thing. Those are our students. Part of the P-TECH program is you have to give kids an opportunity to gain an associate's degree, the 60 hours. You don't necessarily have to obtain it in 4 years because that is very difficult, but you have to do a thing where you basically get them into the blend system or any other community college, and you give them that opportunity to gain those hours. And the big design is when a kid graduates, they are able to walk on to that community college that they've already started. They've already enrolled. They've already done all their paperwork, and then they can continue on and go for that associate's degree if they do. At our level, they usually get a certificate or some sort of level 1 or level 2 certificate that kind of helps them. So then when they graduate, they go and continue that path.
I just noticed the 9 through 14. Is that just because I guess you tell me why the 14?
No, it's when P-TECH was designed, a lot of the bigger city schools, you'll see it, and P-TECH stands for Pathways in Technology. So some of the Dallas schools, they're with IBM. Some of the Austin schools, they're with another big corporation. And basically what it's designed to do is 6 years to get a kid an associate's degree, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're paying for that kid freshman, sophomore year when they graduate for it. But they wanted to show that is a 6-year opportunity to get those kids. Good question.
You didn't know we added 2 more grades? Voted on it.
Any other questions? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Isn't there one more slide?
Was there?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry.
Good
Sorry.
catch.
Good catch. My last one is the Brian C-TECH. Thank you. Our Brian C-TECH, we've started this about 3 years ago. We bus kids over for automotive welding and for our industrial engineering and robotics. That has gone very well over the years. This is something that we've been utilizing because we just don't offer these programs currently in the district. It's been very successful. They are our teachers. We literally bus the kids over there 5 days a week. They do grades, they do attendance. This is one that we do pay tuition. Tuition is basically a wash for ADA in order to pay for that tuition. So hopefully kids show up to school, they want to do it, and what we would have collected in that ADA, that is what we send over to them. Right now, we do have kids busing as we speak. We have 39 of them. Last year or the year before when we presented, we were about 60 kids. So it kind of fluctuates 60, 30. Bryan C-Tech is a junior, senior year program only, so they won't take our freshmen and sophomores. And that's how you'll kind of see some of the dip of our enrollment, because once we allow them as a junior, then we have to allow them to go back as a senior. But it's been really good. We've had 80, 90% pass rate on our industry-based certifications for our automotive kids, our ASEs, our welding kids, AWS. So it's been very successful.
And anybody hadn't seen that facility, that's an awesome facility. So thanks to Brian and for that, and for coordinating. It's a huge resource that we're not all by ourselves to have those kind of resources. It's a lot of land that they put that on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of my favorite things too. And the example that we are, saving tax dollars really because we are able to share that joint facility. They're all fabulous programs.
And it's going
That's well.
good. The drawback is at some point we hit capacity, right? They're going to need more room. We're going to need more room. That'll be the ebb and flow of this. And at some point we may have to look into that. But right now, this year, we're busing. Now I think that's it, Mr. Horak.
I'll click free. Okay, no more.
All right. Thank y'all.
All right, that'll bring us to item E, adjournment. And see y'all back here for the regular meeting.